The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for the 12th of January 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,086.73 an ounce, silver $13.77 an ounce, Texas crude $31.41 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 446 U.S. currency. Today in history, Monday, January 12th, 1863, President Davis delivers his State of the Confederacy address. In recent news, Senator Rand Paul and former HPCO Carly Fiorina will not appear on the primetime debate stage for the Republican Party's 2016 presidential debate later this week. Apparently, the number of candidates allowed for the main debate amongst the frontrunners has been cut down to 7, with Donald Trump, who is leading in the polls, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and Ohio Governor John Kasich all being on the main stage. And even though Paul and Fiorina were formally invited to partake in the underdog debate, Paul did state that he wouldn't participate in anything that wasn't first tier due to artificial designations. It does seem that the heavy anti-socialist rhetoric from Fiorina in prior debates and Paul's willingness to call out aspects of U.S. warmongering in foreign policy has no podium amongst the neocon Republicrats. As 62 million cubic square feet of methane gas leaks daily into the Los Angeles basin since October of last year, U.S. and California regulators have rejected Volkswagen's proposed fix to cars that were involved in last year's emission scam with the EPA. California Air Resource Board Chairman Mary Nichols officially stated, quote, Volkswagen made a decision to cheat on emission tests and then try to cover it up. They continued and compounded the lie, and when they were caught, they tried to deny it. The result is thousands of tons of nitrogen oxide that have harmed the health of Californians. They need to make it right. Volkswagen has since apologized and is seeking an out-of-court solution. Now, only if California Air Resource Board Chairman Mary Nichols could focus her efforts on the 62 million cubic square feet of methane gas, which are daily leaking into the Los Angeles basin since October of last year. Our prayers and condolences go out to the 10 tourists killed in a terrorist suicide attack today in Istanbul, Turkey. A male operative in his late 20s was identified as the culprit and apparently has ties with the Islamic State ISIS, who did claim responsibility. This was your lowdown for January 12th, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you. The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
Every fight you see it coming. The moment you
Bitcoin is immune from attack, or almost completely. Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using the computing power to generate Bitcoin.
There's a system approaching perfection. Just in time for our disappearance. There's a system approaching perfection. Just in time for our disappearance.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast. If it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is The Crypto Show, a show dedicated to understanding the promise of currency, technology, and anarchy, and the pursuit of a free society. And if you believe like we do that such a society can and should exist, then join us, why don't you, as we parade through a world unbound by convention, a world sketched by the beauty of the human artist. Because each and every one of you listening right now is that artist. So, for the next 2 hours, let go of your most sacred system of thought and entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, everything we've been told about currency, technology, and yes, even that dirty, dirty little word anarchy is only one part of an ever-expanding, ever-possible, complex universe of ideas, one that we simply refuse to explore. So, what do you say, listeners? Let's do some universe exploring tonight and have some fun while we do it. It's rolling and trying to catch me riding dirty. Well,
you're always riding dirty.
Well, you're always riding dirty because, you know, a cop can always pull you over and plant stuff on you. I've definitely known people who that's happened to. But anyway, separate from our talks tonight, it's going to be a great show. Later on, after the first segment or two, we're going to have a couple friends of the show on, Zasha and Bart. They've actually both they've actually both been on the show before briefly, but we're going to devote most of a whole show to them and to some discussions and debates about Bitcoin and other topics. I'm really excited about that. They're both smart guys, and I don't see either one enough, especially Zasha. So I'm very excited to have them on.
Yeah, well, Zasha has pizza. I don't know what the other guy's got.
Yeah, he's definitely got one up on Bart. But so we'll talk to them here shortly. Our first guest is actually someone we've been talking to in studio already. We're going to spend a segment or two with him before we get to Zasha and Bart, and he is Evan Duffield of Dash. Dash Coin, cryptocurrency. You can go to dash.org to check out more information. And if you want to check out thecryptoshow.com later, or Let's Talk Bitcoin for the extended interview with him, the sort of pre-interview that gets a little bit deeper into some of the offerings and functionality of Dash and the various things that they're currently working on to improve and expand that cryptocurrency. So Evan Duffield, as I mentioned, he's the lead developer of Dash. Evan, aka E Duffield or Evan82, his handles, brings Dash over 17 years of software development experience in an interest in artificial intelligence, financial markets, and economics. And you can reach him at evan@dash.org. Evan, welcome to the Crypto Show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Definitely, and it's been a very interesting conversation so far in studio, and I definitely hope our listeners check that out. But Evan, for listeners who may be new or listeners who may not have caught you last time you were on the show, let's be a little more general than we were previously, and tell us just what Dash is all about.
So Dash is a cryptographic currency based off of the Bitcoin project, and we have a number of different functionalities. And so where it doesn't have instant transactions, our network does have instant transactions. We also have privacy that's built into the project for the sake of fungibility and protecting users from being spied on. Also, decentralized funding and governance. So our project is actually self-funded from the network protocol itself. And we have decentralized scalable infrastructure, which is a must-have when you're trying to grow a project and support a thriving ecosystem.
Awesome. And some of those points you raised, differentiating Dash from other cryptocurrencies out there. When you say instant transactions, can you give us a comparison, like say to Bitcoin?
Our transactions confirm in about 1 to 4 seconds on the network.
Wow.
And that means that after you get the confirmation, you can't take it back. So you can't hack the network and change the transaction and things like that. Whereas on the Bitcoin network, that on average takes about 10 minutes. And to have a good level of security, it takes about an hour on the Bitcoin network.
Wow. So that definitely leaves, some window open for attack for Bitcoin relative to Dash. And that is pretty instant. That's speedy, I have to admit. When people talk about instant, I think Dash would define it there in the dictionary. Well, of course, Dash was previously known as Darkcoin, and I definitely like the new name. It's a lot snazzier and fitting. Short for Dark Cash, correct?
No, Digital Cash.
I'm sorry, Digital Cash. Thank you. That's what I meant to say. Tell us about the privacy features and how it works. Because of course, with Bitcoin, the blockchain, the ledger, does theoretically tell everyone, who transacts with whom, at least on the level of the address. While certain software is being developed to make it more private, how does Dash get around all that?
Well, on the Bitcoin network, when you do transactions, it's possible that you could be identified. And if you're identified in one transaction, everything after that can also be identified. And so eventually we assume tools will come out that it's going to allow a massive spying on the Bitcoin network. And this is actually already happening. Companies like Coinbase and BitPay, they are using services to analyze transactions to see if maybe they came from, a illegal site or things like that. On the Dash network, this is just simply not going to be possible because of our privacy implementation. And we actually think that's really important just for users' sake to something that is a lot more private and that you can do your day-to-day finances on.
Yeah, I mean, a sort of anonymous cache for the internet kind of thing. And I think that's really cool. And I'm sure you're aware, because you kind of almost made an allusion to it. Of course, as our listeners may already be aware, there's the Blockchain Alliance that popped up, a sort of organization of cooperation between law enforcement and various major players in the Bitcoin space, like Coinbase, for instance. Were you familiar with that, Evan?
Yeah, this is, something that's going to be, expected over time to pop up in the Bitcoin space, because it's possible to spy on networks or spy on users in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so that's a perfect example of why, Bitcoin alone, for instance, as constructed, isn't sufficient, because of its pseudonymous nature versus completely anonymous nature. It can theoretically be tracked and can lead to the popping up of organizations like the Blockchain Alliance, and it's a very grave concern for everyone in the crypto sphere. Well, let's get into that real quick. Tell us, without maybe getting too technical, of course, it's impossible not to some degree, but tell us how the privatization works with Dash.
So you basically can join sessions with other users across the network. These people could be anywhere in the world, and you all put money essentially on a digital table, and you control the money the whole time it's on that table. And then, some guy comes over, which we're going to call the master node operator, and he mixes up the money, and then you take back, random coins off the table. And you can only take the ones that you're owed. And so you put in a certain amount, you get out the same amount. And this whole process is completely secure and trustless, and no one has ever traced any transaction through it.
And that's pretty awesome. Well, just to play devil's advocate, is there any means by which someone could, compromise the node or infiltrate it, or somehow determine transactions going in and out of it, or is it literally just impossible?
It's pretty much impossible to trace these things, because your single DarkSend transaction could actually go through 8 separate nodes, and you would have had to have broken, the security on all of those to do this.
Okay, yeah, sounds pretty impossible then to me. So that's pretty awesome. Well, and I know we kind of got into this a little bit on the pre-record, but tell us a little bit about the self-funding aspect of Dash.
So we have a budget system with decentralized projects, decentralized organizations, and open source software. The primary problem is funding. And so, who pays for what? And after a while, people get tired of footing the bill all the time. And so we created a system which allows the network to be funded, meaning that our blockchain actually funds the operations that are needed to make the network operate.
And that's pretty cool. And that really is an important thing that I think people overlook. While, of course, obviously things like Dash or Bitcoin are sort of automated, mechanized systems based on, computers that run, there's still people that have to own the computers, run the computers, maintain the computers, develop the software that goes on top of it, develop patches, to the main protocol, like with Bitcoin and the core devs. And while the beauty of the cryptosphere is that a lot of people within it are very philanthropic and altruistic and principled and devoted to ideals of anonymity and decentralization and liberty and improved technology that can benefit us all, you still got to pay the bills, and that's an important thing to remember that I think a lot of people forget. And that's why that's such a cool feature of Dash, is that it's self-funding in its own unique way. And it really gives it an edge over a lot of other cryptocurrencies, on top of course, the privacy feature, which is also crucial. Well, we're coming to break, and we're talking with Evan Duffield, and we're going to wrap up with him on the other side in the next segment, and then get to our other guests after that. So stay tuned to The Crypto Show. We'll be right back, guys.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot.
Welcome back to The Crypto Show, guys, here on this lovely January 13th, 2016, a Wednesday, here on Logos Radio Network. brought to you as always by our sponsors, Hill Country Home Improvements, Brave New Books, and soon an added partner, eCoin. And we'll talk more about them coming up in near-term episodes. By the way, Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com. There is their yearly fundraiser contest. I can't remember the details, so I won't go into them, but check out logosradionetwork.com for those details, and I will actually learn them and then bring that up next episode. But it's a cool fundraiser, helps out a great network and radio station for great programming like ours and many other shows. So check that out. And we're talking with Evan Duffield of Dash for one more segment. It's been an interesting conversation. Dash is a pretty awesome cryptocurrency, has some major advantages over not just all the altcoins, but Bitcoin itself. And it's that may not be music to the ears of some Bitcoiners out there, but the beauty of cryptocurrency.
But don't be making fun of Scrooge McAlcoin.
How'd you know I was thinking of Daniel? No, but it's the beauty of the market and the beauty of modern technology that we can come up with all these different ideas and competing technologies. But
first, go ahead. One of the major, really cool coins coming out pretty soon, I heard about, is OJ coin. We'll find out more about that later.
OJ coin, yes. We will find out about that hopefully later in the episode. But anyway, we were talking about how the self-funding works.
That works on proof of stab. But go ahead.
That's good. And of course, don't want to get too much into that because we did talk about that prior in the pre-record, so people can listen to that. But I do want to talk about a couple more things. First off, I know that one of your new projects going on is that you're integrating Dash into the Lamassu ATM machines. Tell us about that, Evan.
So yeah, recently we have negotiated a contract with Beginner and Ira Miller, who is expert programmer, understands the Lamassu ATMs, and they are going to be implementing the code changes required to add Dash to all of the Lamassu ATMs all around the world. And so we funded this purely in a decentralized way directly from the blockchain using something akin to a blockchain contract with the network to fund this work.
Cool.
And so, really excited, and it's worked really well. Overwhelming support, about I think 95 or 97% of the votes were yes.
Wow, that's overwhelming. And I like how you used the blockchain contract. I mean, that's fleshing out the whole usefulness of these technologies. Well, and tell me too, I don't even know actually, are there other cryptocurrencies out there on Lamassu or other ATMs that you can actually transact with at these ATMs, or is Dash the first one? Besides Bitcoin, of course.
The first one. Yeah, so you can only buy Bitcoin off of the Lamassu ATMs, but we are going to be adding the functionality to allow Dash to be a secondary option. And the work required to do this is actually staggering, and it's very complicated. And so we had to go outside and find somebody that was capable of doing it. And that's essentially why no one has done this yet, because it's really expensive, and it takes somebody with very precise knowledge of how these things are set up.
Okay, so it's not just that you need a really smart programmer. It's like you need a really smart programmer who has this niche knowledge for setting up this kind of ATM transaction with the cryptocurrency.
Yeah, exactly.
So once this is set up, will you be able to more easily integrate into other things like Coin Vault? And are you familiar with that?
No, what is Coin Vault?
It used to, I guess it's a guy in Houston. He bought up the Robo Coins and his.
Well, it uses RoboCoin ATM. Yeah.
Well, so that would be a separate project that we would go out and find programmers that want to integrate it into RoboCoin, and then we would do a contract similar to this with them, and then they would do the work separately. So I don't think it would make it easier. It's probably just as much work.
Okay. Well, and I guess tell us then, because as far as I can remember, Lamassu and RoboCoin are the, I guess, two major ATM operators for Bitcoin. Do you know off the top of your head, like what is Lamassu's penetration, and what are some of its features that make it stand out as a Bitcoin ATM?
Well, it's got 150 or so ATMs all around the world.
That's pretty impressive, yeah.
The largest. Yeah, it's impressive. They're definitely the largest ATM provider, which is why we went after them first. And, it'll allow you to buy a Dash at pretty much any country in the world directly through one of these things. It's also a really easy process to use a Lamassu ATM. So that's nice. And using instant transactions plus the Lamassu ATMs, you can suddenly do instant worldwide remittances, and that's something that has never before existed as well, which, will be a useful feature.
No, of course, that's crazy. I mean, obviously, Bitcoin already reduced remittance time compared to, say, Western Union, but with Dash, it's reduced even more, and of course, kept even more private, which is awesome, especially these days when governments, namely the U.S. government, are cracking down on capital transfers across borders. Everyone's a terrorist, everyone's a drug dealer, but that's really awesome. And do you know what Lamassu means?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. I was hoping you did because I don't. Well, we have 3.5 minutes left. That's really awesome. Congratulations, by the way, on this integration with Lamassu. That's really impressive and really awesome. I might have to go buy some when it gets rolled out. Oh, Zasha actually pulled this up real quick. A Lamassu, Sumerian Lamar, Akkadian Lamassu, is an Assyrian protective deity often depicted as having a human's head, a body of an ox, or a lion and bird's wings.
It's Syrian. Oh, no.
Thanks, Zasha. Thanks, nerd. Well, speaking of Zasha...
Oh, no, it's a terrorist machine.
No, Assyrian. Really quick, when is that? Do you know when the rollout is for the Lamassu integration?
We were told that the implementation would take about 2 months, and Lamassu gave us the go-ahead to be able to merge the code up. So we would expect it, sometime probably before June.
Wow, already. That's fantastic. That's coming up. Awesome. So check, maybe we'll have you back on when that does roll out as a little congratulatory, celebratory guest spot. We would definitely like that if you did that. Well, we only have 2.5 minutes left.
What's the price of Dash right now?
I think it's about $310.
$310.
That's pretty good, actually. I mean, I guess our last question as we kind of head out, Zasha in studio, he's a smart guy, keeps up with a lot of this stuff. He had basically wanted you to quickly explain, because we touched on it. I don't know if we got maybe an explanation of the X11 hashing algorithm. I guess, can you tell us real quick what makes it unique or better as a choice?
X11 is essentially designed to be as computationally difficult to process as humanly possible. And so the purpose of doing something like that is that when a computer processes X11, it has to, jump from task to task in a really odd way, which is quite time consuming for the CPU, but it doesn't require the same amount of, resources. And so it actually cools down and reduces electrical consumption while still being incredibly difficult to break because we're using 11 different algorithms.
Okay, so it kind of goes long on time, but short on, say, electric consumption or power consumption.
Yeah, we feel like, proof of stake is nice for the lack of electrical consumption, but, I think you definitely need to tie your proof of work to something real in the real world. So, consuming electricity is a good way to do that. And so we're getting the best of both worlds from utilizing this type of algorithm.
That's pretty amazing. Awesome. Well, Evan, we've got about 30 seconds left. Evan Duffield of Dash.org. Dash, check it out. It's a pretty amazing technology, soon to be integrated with the Lamassu ATMs. Any final thoughts for us?
I have a Dash Evolution prototype that you check out dashevolution.com. In about a week and a half, you can play around with it and see a video. We're essentially trying to compete with PayPal and make a completely decentralized.
Is it possible for radio waves to make you sick? Many people think so, and some are taking refuge in the remote mountains of West Virginia. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you about something called the Radio Quiet Zone next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Wi-Fi, power lines, and cell towers bombard us with radio waves. But for some people, even low levels of this radiation can be debilitating. The condition called electromagnetic hypersensitivity causes acute headaches, burning skin, and chronic pain. The effects are so bad that a colony of Wi-Fi refugees has taken root in the U.S. Radio Quiet Zone in West Virginia. That's an area where all radio transmissions are banned because of the sensitive radio telescopes located there. Gas refrigerators, wood stoves, kerosene lamps. These folks are all too happy to live free from electricity and the radio pollution they say goes with it. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 13, 2016, a Wednesday, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements and our new partner, eCoin, which we'll be talking about coming up in future episodes. And we were just talking with Evan Duffield of Dash.org. Also go to dashevolution.com, I believe was the website. And you can check out his handles, eDuffield and Evan82. And I believe his email was Evan@dash.org. Well, that should have been obvious, I guess. But he's a great guy, smart guy. Dash is a really great cryptocurrency. I mean, honestly, in my estimation, which isn't much because I'm not that much of a technical geek or anything, but just based on all its functionality, it's right up there with Bitcoin, and of course, in some ways, arguably superior. So stay tuned and with them and check out, of course, their websites, and we'll have him back on hopefully with the rollout of the integration into the Lamassu ATM. So we're very excited about that. Congratulations to them. Well, we are now on with our other guests, Bart and Zasha. And they're two friends of ours here at the Crypto Show and Brave New Books. Known both of them now quite a while. Coming on, I don't know, a couple years at least, maybe. And both very smart guys. Both also very open-minded and on board with us here at the Crypto Show with respect to certain certain issues, but maybe some other issues. We have some finer points of disagreement and debate for discussion. So I'm very excited about that. And Bart and Zasha, y'all want to put some headphones on? Test those mics?
Testing.
You got no ears?
No ears.
He literally has no ears that were cut off earlier. I can hear you, I think, through the mic. You don't want to put on your... You sure?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, try his. There you go. All right. So we're going to discuss Bitcoin. And we're also going to discuss some other stuff, some cool stuff later with Bart, too, about O.J. Simpson, for instance. And he has a book with him called, what is it? O.J. is Innocent and I Can Prove It by William C. Deere. And it's funny, I saw a friend earlier, actually, and I brought up the fact that we were going to talk about this very subject. And this friend of mine is actually a professor at a college here in Texas, and he teaches, I think, American history. Smart guy, well-educated, very much alternative when it comes to history and current events, basically very conspiratorial like me. And he was actually pretty on board with that idea, at least variations of it. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And I was kind of surprised. I wasn't surprised exactly, but I still kind of was.
Well, I think the proof is that there's no way OJ could have done it because he was too busy designing Bitcoin, because OJ is actually Satoshi Nakamoto.
That's the first time revelation of Satoshi's real identity here on the Crypto Show. You heard it here first, guys. Well, I want you guys to introduce yourselves. I don't know, Bart, I'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll have Josh introduce himself, and we'll dive into it.
I've been a self-employed remodeling contractor.
Speak a little bit closer to the phone.
All my life, done a few other things, but been interested in economics from a different perspective ever since I was in my early 20s. And one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin is just that I believe money should be a simple, instantaneous cross-transactional bartering tool, and in no way should it ever be turned into some high-tech thing that causes a lot of human time and energy to be all involved in flipping a system.
Well, and real quick, be sure to always talk at the microphone, because sometimes you're going off, and maybe pull that a little closer to your notes. Yep. Well, and just real quick, I like how you kind of summed up your part of your position there, which is say it again, instant cross-transactional.
Yeah, if you think of money as being an instantaneous cross-transactional bartering medium,
medium of exchange,
something that's not volatile and not super manipulative.
So, so you're talking about like tangible cash would be a better idea?
Well, the idea of keeping a volume of gold and silver coin in play that was up to the level of instantaneous cross-transactional bartering that people wanted to do might make sense.
Let's get into that. Sorry, I just want Zasha to be able to introduce himself. I'm glad though that you kind of stated your position. So it sounds like though one of the things you're thinking of good money would be for is stability, and you think that
I'd love to tell you what I think, Chris.
We'll get into that. Anyway, well, Zasha, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just grew up here in Austin. Small restaurant owner.
Well, tell us about that, actually.
How small? It's pretty small. I'm in a trailer now, so it's a lot smaller than the brick and mortar used to be. But
make sure you speak into my heart when you...
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to keep looking that direction. But, yeah, so I've been doing it for about 4.5 years now. It's fun stuff. One of my things that actually got me into Bitcoin, first of all, was actually the... pricing structure of merchants and the processing companies.
In other words, like credit card processing
to take,
and the fee structures there.
They can't even explain them when you call them. It's pretty disturbing. Yeah,
is it just that convoluted, or?
Yeah, I think it's just really such a gray area. They can kind of just go whichever way they want, depending on. I mean, there's thousands of merchant processing companies. They're like worse than used car salesmen. It's pretty
interesting.
Crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Is it kind of negotiable, basically? And do they kind of engage in price discrimination depending on like your ignorance or?
Yeah, absolutely. I
didn't know that. I assumed it was just like a transparent flat fee structure and it was that simple.
No, because like the guys that they send out there, the sales reps can manipulate their pricing because they're based like their pay sometimes is based off your monthly sales draws. And the percentage is based off of that. So they can tack on extra percentages so they just get more money on the back end. I had it happen with one processor after I noticed it after like 2 or 3 months. I was like,
that's crazy. And you just noticed it and you weren't even aware, I guess, probably previously.
Yeah. I always look at that, every month or two and just kind of make sure that they're at least staying close to the same, which is generally... Depending on the size of your business, of course, if you're Walmart or H-E-B or somebody like that, you're going to get like less than 1%. But
because of the scale, yeah. Well, we'll get into that because that is theoretically an advantage of Bitcoin in that it can render such fees obsolete or unnecessary because the transaction fee on a Bitcoin transaction is basically tiny.
Yeah, maybe not obsolete. I do think that there is payment required for those people providing that service, but. I don't think it should be 3 to 5%. Yeah. I mean, Amex is just out of control with that one. That's why a lot of people don't even take Amex.
Right, or at least not obsolete because, like I said, I mean, you still have a fee structure
it's still
in Bitcoin,
like a service,
but you definitely reduce it compared to how traditional transaction processors.
Yeah, kind of how Bart kind of stepped on that with the instantaneous cash transfer and how it shouldn't be volatile and it shouldn't really cost that much because it's really an agreement between. Really close parties. It's not like everyone always talks about globalism. It's like, how many things do you actually physically transact to buy in China or like with that dealer? Of course, they're shipping it over because that's where we all
everything on this back wall.
Especially this back wall here. There's a lot of computer stuff there.
And we're definitely going to dive into that. We've got 1.5 minutes till break, so we're going to save the thrust of that for after the break. But I do want to allow you real quick, as we're coming to break, you mentioned that you're a restaurant owner, but tell us about it because I think you make a great product. It's pizza. Tony's Southside Pizza?
Tony's South Austin Pizza.
Tony's South Austin Pizza. TSA for short.
That's right.
TSA Pizza.
That's right. TSAP.
You don't frisk your customers, do you?
No, not usually.
Would you frisk me?
I probably would do that.
Okay,
yeah,
good. Excellent.
It might cost a little extra though.
Oh, it's worth
on the pie. Yeah,
you name your price.
Okay.
No, well, so tell us about that. When we still had a Bitcoin meetup here, you would supply pizza for us, and it was terrific. Some of the best pizza I've ever had.
Well, I appreciate that.
So, where is it located, and what are your hours of operation? Tell us about all that.
Oh yeah, we're down south in 1626, kind of close to Buda. We only do dinners right now, 4 to 9:30. And then we're open until 10:30 on Friday and Saturday.
And it's a trailer,
as
right?
Well. Yeah, we're in a trailer now.
But you do deliver.
Yeah. It's the expenses are just so much lower to operate versus a brick and mortar, and the risk is lower too because generally you have to sign a 5-year commercial lease at a brick and mortar.
That's so true, which is crazy to think about. It's really
it really is. It locks you into a long time because what if you're starting a business, it doesn't make it.
Right, and you take Bitcoin, right?
I do take the Bitcoin.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we'll be right back on the other side of this break with Zasha and Bart to talk about some stuff. We'll be right back.
Chip in my babies, stay out of our lives. Don't want no shackles. Don't want no shackles on me. I
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely Wednesday, January 13, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network. Be sure to go to logosradionetwork.com and check out their yearly fundraiser contest for a good cause and some cool stuff that you can win. And don't forget our sponsors, Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and soon to come, eCoin. And we were just talking in the first part of the show with Evan Duffield of Dash, so check out dash.org, dashevolution.com. And we're talking, of course, now with our good friends here in studio with us, Zasha of Tony's South Austin Pizza. Be sure to check that out. And actually, real quick before we get to Bart, phone number and website.
Oh, yes, Tony'sPizzaAustin.com and 512-280-2800. Pretty easy number.
You said that so sensually.
Hey, you know.
Well, all right, let's dive into this because just to clarify if it wasn't clear for our listeners, we always, of course, have on people who are advocates of Bitcoin and, of course, in the Bitcoin space as far as technological development. With Bart and Zasha, we have a little bit more of a skeptical take on things. Bart, a little bit more on the other end of it. Zasha, maybe a little bit more in between.
I'm a little blended.
A little blended.
Yeah.
Well, by tomorrow, though, Bart will have told us all of the flaws with Bitcoin, and it will no longer be worth having, and you'll probably just want to sell everything you have, get rid of it, because it's a waste of human time and energy.
Well, we'll see. It's a pretty serious subject for you to be, joking about right now. And I want to get to the bottom of why it might not work the way you guys tell everybody that it's going to work.
Well, go ahead with that the first thing you said there with
I don't really want to be coaxed into running my argument exactly as you'd have.
No, I have a perfect scenario.
I'm trying here to try to, as a guest.
Let's just let him.
We're all living in a highly specialized, highly interdependent economy where most of us want to achieve a middle class lifestyle, and we hope that the farmers will do their farming job well, and we hope that the carpenters will do their job well, and we hope that the doctors and nurses will all do their job well. I believe our Federal Reserve note problem that's created a $20 trillion debt cycle is a huge problem.
Agree with you 100%.
We're trapped in a debt cycle because somebody made debt money masquerade as value money. While they were doing that, you can watch that take place in the different laws that were created to look at the look at the United States going bankrupt back in 1933, government hiding that bankruptcy. Look at the way the men and women of law, finance, intel, and media kind of got together and became, the well-to-do in our society. That, to me, is a RICO actionable fraud, where an honest lawyer would say, the hardworking Americans shouldn't be bankrupt. They shouldn't lose their middle-class lifestyle to the fraud of
an honest lawyer is almost a joke, too.
I know, right? Tell me about it.
While people are running around promoting this idea of Bitcoin's going to save us, they're taking up ground around us. And money doesn't need to be a high-tech, super volatile thing.
I'd like to follow up on that a little bit.
Go ahead.
So on that, that's, I think putting too much of the blame a little bit on like the Federal Reserve note and like, the system of us getting into, roughly $20 trillion in debt, when that's not even the big issue. Like the Federal Reserve Bank compared to like what the major 6 banks are doing with the derivatives market is, it's not even close to comparison. You're going from 20 trillion to 600 trillion on the low end. And some people even put it in like 1.5 quadrillion number.
I agree, but I would also argue though that the Fed is still the basis for it. Without their money creation, their credit creation, all that pyramiding of derivatives
for this show,
would be possible.
I'm bringing the simplest argument to the problem.
But I think it's all kind of the same mix. The banks and the derivatives and the Fed and its credit creation and the debt, they're really all of a piece. But you're right to point that out.
And it wasn't the Fed that started this. They're just an arm of the British banking system. They've been running this game for a really long time.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, there's nothing that's really changed, but they just keep changing the front, this is the cool thing. Now euro is kind of the denomination that everything's getting lent out in as far as like corporate bonds. It's like the most issued one in the last probably 5 years or so.
Right.
Even over the dollar.
In excess of the dollar. Although that seems to potentially be shrinking and pulling back, although it's hard to say.
It probably will because the euro does not look very, very healthy right now.
Right. But that's a good point though. It's when you scratch underneath the surface, it is all the same sort of banking families and interests that have been around for a long time. And it's the same beast with different heads, whether it's the Fed, the European Central Bank, or, if they crash both of those monetary systems, they'll try it out in a Amero or a Bancor or some other regional.
Possibly.
Or Bitcoin, possibly. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears though slightly. I definitely agree with both of you on this assessment. And I think a lot of our listeners would agree with the problem, right? So I guess let's talk about what is the solution, and why is Bitcoin not a potential solution?
Great,
like,
that's a great question.
I understand what Bart means, by the way, when he says a waste of human time and energy, and I maybe have some responses to that. But they're shorthand for what he's trying to say.
Let's shorten that up, Chris, for a second.
Yeah.
I can delve right into that. I talked to Harlan at the bookstore, and Harlan, when he gets his back up, is a very bright guy. And so I got his back up a little, and he laid down a scenario of where the Bitcoin could, moving forward, stand up to the Federal Reserve system and solve a lot of our problems. My problem with his explanation, it took me like a week to think my way through it, was just that not everybody in the Bitcoin community was going to be as idealistic as him. The Bitcoin community, I didn't believe, would self-police itself well enough to where it could keep the IRS from squashing it, or keep it, literally, people have gotten rich off the Federal Reserve note system from buying up the Bitcoin and making it shake, rattle, and roll in whatever direction they wanted it to shake, rattle, and roll in. And in that way, it can become a huge diversion and a huge distraction to us being able to get our country back.
Well,
briefly, Chris, let me just go on.
I'm going to respond to that,
imagine in 2013 Bitcoin, this happens. Bitcoin survives the Mt. Gox debacle. Okay. And moving forward from that, people realize that, this Bitcoin, sponsored mostly by libertarians and agorists, people believe that there's enough interest holding Bitcoin at around $600. It went from $2 to being worth like $1,100. It's something that can only go to zero. There's only 21 million of them. Why can't this thing catch a ride on a speculative bubble? If it had, in 2014, caught a ride on a speculative bubble, and there were, say, a world population of, say, 300 million people, just as something to throw out, roughly the population of the U.S., and they decided it would be better to be buying and selling with this new form of currency, for them to have a stored value of $10,000 and $2,000 of walking around money, but in Bitcoin, the Bitcoins would all have to be worth about $150,000 a piece. Yeah. And when that happened, then it's not like a regular bubble. The beauty of that is that the bubble fades away and you've just got new liquidity. In a system that's liquidity starved, there's always a crisis of liquidity because the system's running on a false liquidity. It's running on debt money that masquerades as value money. And so Harlan's version of how it could have worked if everybody got it and everybody could police it right seemed like it could, at a certain point, somebody might say, this is ridiculous that these early adopters of Bitcoins would get to be billionaires just because they got to know about it and caught information about it beforehand. The Bitcoin people would have had to work that out too. But that's my place on it. And now you've got, if it worked, then you've got all these other crypto. Well, we got to have a crypto coin. We got to all those people aren't working to feed, clothe, house, healthcare people. They're not guaranteeing. Here's things work.
Here's the difference, and I definitely I agree in a very real sense about we shouldn't be diverting.
Wait a minute, it's not doing anything to feed and clothe people. Have you heard of Sean's Outpost?
What I know that it is, but relative to what? It's not. Is it? I would argue the best way to feed and clothe everybody is to have everybody run to the judge and say, somebody issued me a false currency. My country's bankrupt.
And
fix it, dude.
Well, let me quickly respond to that because we actually discussed that at lunch yesterday, and I thought we had a really good discussion. And I felt you, on some level, maybe agreed with me that with the RICO fraud thing. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's no denying that in a very real legal sense, you could apply that sort of criminal enterprise to the whole system. The problem is, while we can recognize that as a fact, it would be really difficult to actually make it work because the whole system is so corrupt. And even where it would be, I feel like it would be next to impossible.
Electing Ron Paul might have done it.
And certain
everybody know how.
I mean, certain improbable things might have at least gotten us closer to doing it. Sure, but
not that Ron Paul had all the answers. I thought he needed to learn a few things before he could move forward, but he was trying to go in the right direction.
No one's 100%.
Yeah, and at least, exactly. And at least the whole visibility of the issues was a big part of his campaign, regardless of anything else. Of course, we can't just rely on some man in power to do the right thing, even if he seems like he was the real deal. But, I mean, I just want to add, so we understand the RICO problem. We understand the fraud. The legal system probably isn't the way to prosecute anybody for it. So the solution is to find alternatives to the fraud. And we do know the dollar is on the way out. It's a fraud. It's probably going to collapse. It's inflationary. It creates the bubbles. So we try to find alternatives to it. And, as much as I, promote Bitcoin, not 100% without any concerns, of course. I also promote gold and silver to this day as a hard currency that people can use. But, and we're coming to break, so I'm going to take us out and we'll have some other responses on the other side. But as far as what you brought up about Mt. Gox, you have to separate the fraud. The dollar is inherently fraudulent. Bitcoin is not. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't be part of frauds like pyramid schemes and thefts, right?
Or taken over by the fraudsters.
That's an important point to keep in mind. Well, and even if it can be taken over, we'll talk about that on the other side, because, again, that's not inherent to the Bitcoin itself. We'll be right back with Zasha and Bart. Stay tuned. So welcome back to the Crypto Show, guys. We're having a lively discussion here about Bitcoin with Bart and Zasha. And I want to respond to some of Bart's points and let Zasha also, too. Let's talk about the first statement you made about money needs to be an instant cross-transactional medium of exchange.
Money should be a good instantaneous cross-transactional bartering tool in a sense.
Right.
Or
so I would argue that
that's a perfect description of Bitcoin.
Not at all. Bitcoin has the potential to be highly volatile while it's allowing people to do their instantaneous cross-transaction bartering.
It can be volatile.
While an economy crashes and the Bitcoin people are maybe left rich, here's the thing. A lot of divisiveness.
It is volatile. That doesn't mean it's not instant and an instant cross-transactional medium of exchange. In fact, it is.
Very true.
As Danny mentioned, someone in the Ukraine bought a pair of shoes from us for the Free Ross fundraiser.
It was a My Magic Mud. So for the Free Ross fundraiser, this guy wants to buy some My Magic Mud. 2 seconds later, I have Bitcoin, and then I mailed him the My Magic Mud. How more instantaneous do you want that to be? Run that through the banking system and see how long it would take him to get, or me, to get the money from the Ukraine.
I want that.
It would have been about a month-long process.
Imagine a person buying, and if Bitcoin had done what a lot of people thought it was going to do, and it had blown up to where each Bitcoin was worth $150,000 a piece, how did the people that were sitting on that liquidity, how did they add value in the work that they did, or in the unless the Bitcoin actually did create a balanced economy out of the
Bitcoin itself has
provided.
Bitcoin itself has value added from other technological features. Its ledger system can serve as a way of as a sort of.
If somebody became Bitcoin rich, wouldn't they be allowed? They don't have to go risk getting be a nurse and risk getting an infectious disease. They don't have to create.
I don't know if that's a fair argument.
They don't have to. They don't have to. And again, it's liquidity.
Let me respond. So while it does seem unfair in a sense that early adopters of a new technology or a new asset become disproportionately wealthy compared to everyone else, nonetheless they took on the risk of an uncertain, risky asset. They informed themselves about it, and kind of that's just life. Some people are just lucky to be at the right place at the right time with the right knowledge. Right. That doesn't mean though that no one else benefits from it.
It sounds exactly. This is completely unfair. I wasn't able to create Microsoft before the other guy did.
Right.
That's his fault, not mine.
You guys are creating apples and oranges to throw stuff
no.
back
And so
at me in a way that I just can't get. That you don't get that. Ideally, to get money and to be wealthy, you need to create valued goods and services, and hopefully in an environmentally sensitive way.
Well, and that's what people have done with Bitcoin or with gold, right? If you think about it this way.
So money is high technology. So you don't need to get the GMO.
You could argue
what good or service did the Fed create?
The Fed allows the people in the United States to be 5% of a world's population and use 30% of the world's resources. There's no Walmart over in China with all the stuff we need over here. We
definitely get that it's an unfair system.
That's how people got bought by fake money.
Right.
That's why we agreed to be $20 trillion in debt. We were bought by stolen resources that the Fed provides.
Well, we don't disagree with that. We don't disagree with that.
A bunch of guys that think they're super smart chatting up how good the Bitcoin is doesn't help that reality to emerge and be pointed out.
Let's get past the problem because we all understand and agree on the problem. But as far as look at gold, for instance, I believe you made comments before that you think gold and silver, which is constitutional money technically, and which you called for.
No, I didn't like being called a gold bug when you kicked me off the air a long time ago.
All right, well, Bart, let's leave grudges out of this for the moment. You have expressed an advocacy of gold and silver as money, and
not really. Not the way you might.
Well, okay. Well, let me just put it. Well, let me just get to my point then.
So you don't want gold and silver as money. You don't want Bitcoin as money. What do you want? Apples and oranges as money, or what?
Well, of course, I would want apples and oranges. Can't you tell that I'm an apples and oranges kind of guy? That's a ridiculous question.
Well, I guess
just kind of let's keep this intellectual and not disintegrate.
I mean, okay, maybe his delivery could have been better, but it's still a valid question. Which is,
would I have as money?
What would you have as money? Yeah.
Why couldn't we as people agree that we need a good instantaneous cross-transactional bargaining medium,
that's what has
and
happened.
not have one group of nerds create the Bitcoin and then another group of nerds look at this altcoin and another group of nerds and have them all think that they just delivered a technology into the hands of the little people when they're being disingenuous and trying to get rich off of having some coin that they have leverage on that hasn't been approved by the people and creates a lot of liquidity.
The fact of the matter is that anyone who offers a currency that you're talking about as an alternative to the Fed and the dollar, they're going to have the advantage of the first comer, and they're going to have the advantage of having more of it. Let's say it's gold. People who own gold mines have the advantage of getting gold out of the ground at a lower cost than the market value of gold. Is that unfair? Maybe in some inner metaphysical sense, but that's reality. That's the only way it can be done.
Well, Bitcoin can wind up being a network marketing scheme where profits at the top are driven by the exponential growth at the bottom, and that's the way it seems. And a lot of people
can't have exponential growth
plans,
at the bottom, though.
Yeah, you just said it was infinitely divisible.
It's not infinitely divisible.
Okay, there's going to go 6 places. That's another thing that I wanted. Before we get into this, I'd love to talk about the potential for there to be a dark wallet manipulation within the system where Intel is somehow hiding how many investors and how many people are actually been buying Bitcoins, but it's not driving. It's not driving the value of the Bitcoin because Bitcoin's being manipulated in a different way than gold and silver coin would have been manipulated because they don't want the powers that be don't necessarily want that kind of power to.
Sasha, did you have a response?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of say, what you're explaining applies to everything, all of the monies, all the commodities, they control them all,
or can potentially
because they print unlimited fiat that has the perception, and they tax it. And as Paul Krugman said in an interview about Bitcoin, that the dollar has value because it's backed by men with guns. I was straight out of his mouth.
He did say that. Wow.
Yeah, he said that in an interview on one of the mainstream media.
About that,
pretty crazy. But I think that you're highlighting a problem that I think cryptocurrencies can alleviate. But I'm not saying that Bitcoin is that cryptocurrency. But I think the idea of cryptocurrencies like the Evan that you had on earlier talking about Dash, it's going to spark people like that actually have ideas in the dark wallet and the electronic alternatives that we're about to go into the 100% sci-fi age, like in the 80s movies. It's going to be almost like
Back
right
to the
there.
Future, DeLorean,
super
time travel.
Yeah, hell, we might even have hoverboards to travel at some point in the future. Who knows?
They actually did come out with a kind of thing like that this past year. Literally.
Yeah, I saw that guy in the water. He broke the Guinness record. He went.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. But back to the subject. It's an inherent problem, I think, in any fiat or commodity. These banks just want to control resources and delegate whatever they want to anything. But the power that crypto gives people is that these nerds can make a coin in their basement. And if they get a certain amount of people to believe in that, and it replaces the thought, which money is really just a perception of value.
You mean the 60 banks that invested in the blockchain technology this year?
All on everything. They're all on it now.
The 130 million invested in it in the first month of 2016, or the 10 billion invested in it already?
I've been voicing that opinion for a long time, that the banks have been investing in this secretly for a while because they know it's going to be better in the long run. However you want to break that down, if it's bad or good, that's not really the point. It'll be cheaper and deflationary in price, which is a interesting point, which they always want to do inflation because it keeps them in control.
Right.
Which is kind of cool about Bitcoin and cryptos, is they are naturally deflating currencies, which actually matches up more to free market economics.
Well, that speaks to your human time and energy, because when a currency is inflationary,
now it does. And I'm glad you brought that up. Just real quick, about the mining part. That's the one problem that I kind of threw me off about Bitcoin at first, was the specialized ASICs. I would really have liked it to, I don't know if this is even possible. I'm not a programmer or expert in cryptography by any means, but I feel like there is probably a way to make it to where you can just keep it on GPUs, enabling, the small guy and everybody to participate even more, instead of now having to buy specialized equipment, which makes it to where you can concentrate the power and the control a little bit easier that way. But
I'm not an expert either, but I think you can do that. Like with Litecoin, they use a different algorithm system, and it can be run on.
Talking about Dash, I really like that whole idea. I pretty much liked the idea, even between all the hype when it was Xcoin to Dark to everything. It was
right. It's cool that you've been following it that long.
Yeah, I mean,
but like he said, Dash offers an alternative to that threat of centralization that Bitcoin, for material technologic reasons, faces. And so it's almost better to talk about, instead of Bitcoin, maybe cryptocurrency in general,
because it's a brand. It's like Q-tip is a cotton swab. It's not. It's not like Bitcoin isn't the only crypto.
It's like
there will
gold
be many
versus
cryptos.
precious metals, maybe, or something. But and I want to address that too, just real quick. Going back, is that Bart brings up good points about the manipulation, and that's real and that's undeniable, but that's not inherent to Bitcoin. And it can, and like you said, it can happen to gold or silver.
Or
it does happen to gold or silver.
Real estate.
It could happen to any alternative currency or money that private individuals or people battling the powers that be could come up with. And that's a real concern. And we should never be we should always be vigilant of that. That's one thing I've actually stressed. But that doesn't mean that
you're not being vigilant because you're not telling Congress that you need to have real money. You're letting these nerd-based currencies emerge that are highly volatile, highly bizarre. They're going to make people that don't make a direct contribution into the economy potentially very rich. You're going to have a lot of people that are disappointed because their particular
Congress. What do you mean they don't make a contribution into the economy?
Just creating money out of thin air. If you can talk it up and make everybody believe that it should be recognized as good liquidity.
I agree.
That's weird, man.
I agree, but that's not what Bitcoin...
Most intellectuals around the country that aren't listening to this show would be horrified.
You're fallaciously
by your
conflating
logic, I believe.
Bitcoin and the Federal Reserve, though. So
how am I?
Let me explain that. So, but as far as letting Congress know, I don't think Congress should create money or manage money.
Can you repeat what I'm doing, Chris? You said I'm doing something I'm saying something. There's an intellectual flaw in something I said.
Right. You're conflating the Federal Reserve with Bitcoin. You're conflating the literal money out of nothing that the Fed does with what Bitcoin does.
No, I can see they both create money out of nothing in a certain way. And the Bitcoin people think their way is good and corrects the Fed. And that's at intellectual depth. That is a ridiculous thing.
So the Fed can costlessly make money out of nothing. Bitcoin requires heavy costs to make money out of nothing. In the same way that mining gold is a heavy cost to create money out of nothing. And that is a huge difference. And it's not just the currency, but other technological applications of Bitcoin that make it valuable. And so as far as the volatility too, any new asset is going to have volatility. In fact, the volatility of Bitcoin has gone down pretty substantially. And it will, the more it's adopted, the more it will go down. The dollar has had volatility. The dollar hasn't the dollar lost 97% of its value in the past, several decades? That's volatility.
Compared to Bitcoin?
We're coming back after the end of this break with Bart and Zasha. Stay tuned.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Oh, for the longest time. Oh, for the longest. If you said that Bitcoin was my life.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 13th, 2016. A Wednesday here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and soon eCoin. And we're talking about Bitcoin with Bart and Zasha and whether it is a viable alternative to the Fed. So I just want to quickly try to address a couple points, Bart, if I may. And I also want Zasha to...
This is Chris from Bitcoin's network marketing scam. So...
Well,
that's what apparently this show is, a network marketing scam. When is the network going to pay me?
So I do first, and I kind of want to maybe address that, but the human time and energy, and that is a real concern. I think ultimately that's probably the one thing that you find, and I'm just guessing, forgive me if I'm misstating, but the one thing that you think is the biggest problem. So let me address that. I've already kind of addressed it to the extent that, I haven't even said anything and you're already shaking your head.
You're on the show all the time. If you want me to bring up why I bring up the idea of human time and energy, information and technology, love to do it.
So human time and energy, the fact of the matter is that in any complex society where specialization occurs, somebody's going to have to be the farmer, somebody's going to have to be the doctor, somebody's going to have to be the carpenter, the pizza maker, whatever. There's also going to have to be somebody who provides the currency. Now, that doesn't mean that we need a centralized state-enforced currency like the Fed, by no means. For a long time, gold and silver and other market currencies that were decentralized, that had multiple centers of production, and were not controlled necessarily by any particular group,
many altcoins, many hands in the till creating the currency. So you don't need those hands in the till. You just need a stable, instantaneous cross-transactional.
So I'll address that. And
medium, and you could get it real quick by just the people agreeing to something that makes sense.
So part of the thing too is that the market in reality involves experimentation and trial and error. So let's say Bitcoin or cryptocurrency proved to be a total waste of time. The fact of the matter is it wasn't a waste of time discovering that and discarding it. Now, the fact of the matter is that it won't be a complete waste of time. Even some of the biggest Bitcoin advocates and owners like Eric Voorhees or Roger Ver have said, if Bitcoin fails as a currency, they don't care. And they have some of the biggest shares of it, if you will. because it's as much about the technology of the blockchain and Bitcoin that are and related applications that can revolutionize humanity and the economy. So as far as human time and energy, the whole market process is one of trial and error. There's going to be waste. There's going to be even fraud. And that's part of the learning process. And like, again, with gold, it takes human time and energy to dig it up. It feels like a waste. Why did we bother with gold so long? Having all those people labor and divert steel and wood to create implements to dig it up. Because money is a necessary part of a modern economy. Because barter is extremely inefficient for the most part, you need a medium of exchange to allow indirect exchange. And that's where money comes in.
Well, it's not really a waste anyway, because the incentive has incentivized people to create faster and more efficient machines.
Yeah,
or producing faster, any good
has done what? Yeah. Saved human time and energy, right?
Right.
There you go.
Absolutely. And again, even though it was a handful of nerds, say, who, developed and then promoted Bitcoin, the market has spoken to some extent because people have adopted it. Even big companies like Microsoft and Dell have adopted it. Small companies, average people have given it value because they see the value in it. You know what I'm saying? So it's not being forced on anyone, and let the people decide. And people are, to some extent, deciding. One last thing I want to add is, if the proper value of Bitcoin is 150,000 notionally, sure, but not everyone has figured out that the dollar is on a crash course for disaster. Not everyone has figured out that Bitcoin even exists, let alone some of its potential benefits. And more than that, it's kind of like with gold too. Like, some people see the adjustment value of gold at like 50,000 a gram, and that could be true. Just because it hasn't reached that point doesn't mean that gold isn't a sound money and store of value. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is too, if Bitcoin ever gets to, or gold for that matter, gets to 150,000, it's not even actually going to be worth that much in today's terms. It'll be less than that. It'll be a nominal value because the dollar will be worth that much less. $150,000 won't buy nearly as much then as it does today. And that's an indication that there's a reset between a dying dollar and all other sound money, whether that's Bitcoin, gold and silver, or something else that the market comes up with. You know what I'm saying? And so,
it's like Washington said, a wagon full of paper rarely buys a wagon full of goods.
Exactly. That's a brilliant quote. Yeah. And, so as far as
provisions,
Bitcoin,
I believe was the actual word, but
either way. But as far as Bitcoin adds liquidity, it's useful, good liquidity. And to the extent that it adds liquidity, it necessarily means that the dollar's liquidity is going down. And see, that's the beauty of it. It's not inflationary in that sense, because as people use Bitcoin, they're essentially abandoning the dollar. And the dollar, the less that people use the dollar, the less, by definition, liquidity it has. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, no, I don't. I disagree. If people are ready and they have dollars and they have, instead of 100 million people being out of work, people might go to work to get some Bitcoins off people who hold Bitcoins, and they might go to work to get some dollars off of people that hold dollars.
Well,
it might move closer to everybody being able to have a middle-class lifestyle. But as you promote Bitcoin and other people are involved in other altcoins, there's a lot of stuff that's not being accounted for when you don't evaluate this at the right level of intellectual depth. If you decide that something's just good and you're going to promote it and you're going to look at just the reasons why it's good and why it makes sense, and not see that it may be hyperinflationary, that it may be a distraction from people rallying in the streets and standing up to the Fed as the dollar becomes more obviously ridiculous because people think they can bail into an altcoin.
It's not hyperinflationary though, and it's only a distraction.
It's deflationary.
It's only a distraction insofar as any useful tool to fight the system is a distraction, because you have to focus energy on it. And that's like it's not a very rigorous way of saying it's a distraction. Real distractions exist, like the media and the O.J. Simpson trial and stuff like that. But people are trying to find a real alternative. And maybe it's not Bitcoin, but whatever it is needs to be worked out and given a shot. You know what I'm saying?
Many simple things that I believe would work. And
what would be one, just out of curiosity?
Well, if you had if we had an electable official that we all believed in, and he was like JFK, and he said, hey, these debt money masquerading as value money's created all this debt. That equates, the debt is based on the RICO fraud.
That's a big if, and he would end up like Kennedy, though. Just
perhaps he would.
Totally.
Perhaps he could move in with his own Secret Service.
You may want to look a little deeper into that Kennedy thing, because it's not exactly what you think. He was not trying to. He wasn't up to anything good.
And that's also putting your faith into elected officials, which I think we all know how that has treated the American people over. How far do you want to go back?
to the beginning.
Yeah,
before
I was going to say
beginning.
that, but I was going to leave it open.
If we weren't bought by stolen resources, we got to be 5%, living off 30%. We might be watching our politicians a little more closely instead of flying remote control planes or whatever it was into buildings so we could set our troops down.
But and the Bitcoin can actually undermine that resource drain, because the resource drain exists in part because America
is that wishful thinking, or is that true?
What?
That Bitcoin can undermine?
Yes, because
Chris wants it to be so, or for real reasons.
That too. But
are we allowed to argue with Chris?
Of course, and you are arguing with me, so that's the beauty of this discussion. But so the reason it can is because it offers people are basically forced by point of a gun, directly or indirectly, to use dollars to transact in oil, gold, and all major commodities in the world. It's because of our military presence around the world and our ability it's the reason to bully people around. If you offer a payment protocol, a means of exchange, a money that is an alternative to the dollar, that necessarily makes people freer and doesn't cause that transfer of wealth from everyone else to Americans who use the dollar. You know what I'm saying?
Chris, imagine this scenario. As Bitcoin becomes more accepted and the libertarians and agorists talk it up, somewhere in Intel, people realize how the loss of socioeconomic and political power that the emergence of Bitcoin might cause. They can have troll stooges out anywhere buying up the Bitcoins, manipulating that technology into whatever they want.
I don't disagree with that, but again, that applies to anything.
Everything.
Yeah. And we're coming to
succumb to that.
So we're coming to break, and I want
why have a complicated thing that could get busted like that?
Well, because we have to try something. I think it's better than nothing, and that's the thing.
I really like what you said earlier to kind of about the building it up and trial and error. You got to have that with anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Like making pizzas or new money or whatever.
And one final point, I want Zasha to have some stuff to say on the other side.
We're doing a full remodel for it next week, $30,000 worth of Bitcoin.
Bam.
Yeah, and real good in service being transacted for it. So we're coming to break with Bart and Zasha here on the Crypto Show. It's been a good discussion. We still got a couple more segments, so stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Jabber, jabber, jabber. It's the sound of people talking about other people. Gossiping around the water cooler is an age-old tradition, but is it really okay? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you more in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Gossip is more than just idle talk. A study by Northeastern University proves that negative chit-chat actually changes the way we view the person who's defamed. Volunteers viewed images of neutral human faces paired with neutral, positive, or negative gossip. When shown an image associated with negative comments like "she stole money," volunteers spent much more time studying the person's face than they did the other faces. Researchers believe the change in the visual perception of people associated with negative gossip is a protection mechanism. It helps us steer clear of people with a reputation for lying, cheating, or harming others. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
About chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction, been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons, been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian, been shouting at leaders who claim to be listening, and the pendulum swings from...
Welcome back to Playing Cards with My Brother's Kids on the Crypto Show.
Welcome back, guys. We're talking with Bart and Zasha about Bitcoin, and we're still kind of working on that. We might switch gears here in the last couple segments and talk about some OJ and other things. But let's I want to hear some of the thoughts of Zasha's real quick. But before we do, what was the last thing we talked about coming out? I can't even remember the break. Well, one thing I want to address. Go ahead.
Zasha gave you credit for bringing up the idea that when you do something technical.
There's always waste in innovation. There's trial and errors. We always will have.
Right, and that's an important thing to recognize because, even if Bitcoin doesn't work as a currency, it has offered a lot of things to the world. But as far as you made a comment off here about money when it's made technologic is, the realm of the intellectuals. Well, the intellectuals can only have a monopoly on money if the state grants that to him. And I will say that there's a natural monopoly on things that are arcane or complex forms of knowledge. Money is one of those. Forget money as digits on a computer or a blockchain or whatever. When money was paper currency, it was beyond the reach of most people to understand how it worked. Even before we had modern financial derivatives, even the simpler forms of derivatives and other financial or instruments that existed back when we had only paper money, say in like the 19th century, were beyond the grasp of most people. Doesn't mean they couldn't have learned how to do it, but it was non-obvious stuff that took technical training or experience or lots of thought. You know what I'm saying? So certain things are always going to be to the advantage of maybe smarter people or people who are just more intellectual because they've had a better education or whatever. But
why would you want to allow that where everybody now is going to, instead of just being able to live a practical life and be a part of a highly specialized, highly interdependent economy, everybody's got to figure out a new way to be a middleman or a way to make currency sort of weird and where the average man
not everyone has to do that. Only some people do that. And again, creating money is a necessary function in society.
Absolutely.
So some human time and resources have to go into
that.
that.
Why have it be huge? How many people do you want to have?
Huge. It's not
huge. How many people should have their hands in the till?
The market determines that.
Wouldn't not allowing someone to do that be, I don't know, socialism, communism, somewhere along there?
Not at all. The idea that you start with a simple, instantaneous, cross-transactional bartering medium allows people to all be involved in doing.
But there's a lot of
real things.
There's a lot of assumptions in what you're saying, though. Like, just starting
with fairly simple ones that would be hard for anyone to argue with at depth. And if you wanted to go right into that, I don't think you could get by me. I mean, it's a weird place to go.
Well, we can go there, but let's, Zasha, do you have any? We've kind of. I want to hear more from you.
Just in general, or.
Just in general, your thoughts. I mean, I feel like as kind of director of the show,
quit rubbing his leg to try to get him to be on your side. He was my buddy.
I can rub his leg. He's not your buddy anymore.
We share lots of. I think we agree on a lot of things, but
I want to see a little bit more of your perspective because it's a little bit more.
It's open-ended. Like I don't know if that's the word you used a minute ago. It's just assuming a lot of things what Bart is saying, and I would agree with that. I'm not disagreeing that it could be co-opted very easily, and et cetera, which is something I have a problem with Bitcoin developers. And excuse me, just like on the internet back in the day, it was a great idea and all this stuff, and it allowed us to do things that we've never even thought that we could ever do, and made having online meetings. I mean, it's just revolutionized the business world in its entirety.
But
and Bitcoin will do that, I think, financially and also in other ways, just like Factom is doing, putting information from hospitals onto the blockchain because they're terrible at managing that information. Right. So it has lots of
$1.30 a coin, by the way. It went up.
I saw that. Yeah,
that was
nice.
Bitcoin with the idea that you can have a ledger is just simply bizarre to me.
But that's because it is a crazy concept. Because there's
a blockchain, but
there's multiple levels though to Bitcoin. Yeah, it's not just like it's not just a currency or a medium of exchange. It does a lot of other things, which I think is very interesting and complicated about it. That it also has a back end of value. It's almost like like one of the first digital companies or something. Like it's incorporate. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's almost incorporating like newer technologies in the last 10 years, like cloud technology and stuff like that, and data management and all this stuff. All
sort of brought them all together, or made them more relevant, whereas before they're more niche or more sort of
absolutely. And now they're about to, I believe, tie all of this stuff onto the blockchain, and it will make things more efficient, and it will kill a lot of people's jobs, unfortunately. But in history, people like that. That's a kind of a thing I don't know if I agree with all the time. People are like, technology will murder all the jobs.
No, technological unemployment. If it exists,
changes the job market.
It just alters it. Because if you think about it, like, did the printing press make everyone jobless?
No, absolutely
did the car
not. It actually made more jobs because people started being independent journalists. And
it creates needs, not even just necessarily like psychic needs, but like when you create a car, you then create a need for mechanics, for people to maintain it, or you create needs for devices that improve the car, whether that's like a certain type of fuel or whatever. So it's the technological unemployment is not a real thing. And I understand why people fall for that trap. But if anything, it's going to create more employment. There's no end to human needs and employment. But
no, absolutely not. What's real funny though, that the jobs it will kill, I believe, in my opinion, are going to be the banks' jobs. Yeah, like banksters. It's already happening now. Investment banking and currency and forex investment bankers are getting slashed by the thousands at every major bank right now.
Literally, like
in the thousands. Yeah, they are just taking them down, almost probably pushing them out windows or something.
I know those banker suicides.
The suicides, right? But anyway, it's going to replace a lot of their jobs. There's also an interesting topic I believe would be for another discussion since we don't have that much more time. But I do think that. Overall, it is going to be like cryptocurrency. I like to say that instead of Bitcoin, like branding it, because there's so many different awesome ideas from Ethereum to Dash to Next. I mean, this is about to open up doors that we never thought could be open. The only thing that scares me is people are going to sell out for the fiat money. And I hope these programmers and developers that kind of hear this is like, don't sell out. The value is actually in providing services and goods for your economy forever. You'll become more wealthy than any fiat money will ever be able to.
And
do.
it also eliminates a lot of the jobs that you would need from government.
It eliminates almost all of them, which is great. Great, yeah, because they're so inefficient. Oh gosh, I have insane stories from owning my small little business about the inefficiencies in government. It just blows my mind.
And the inefficiencies that they impose on businesses.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's one thing for them to be inefficient in a service they monopolize or in draining tax money from consumers or businesses, but then imposing regulations on businesses that could make them inefficient too.
Like a real estate contract. Just think of all the people that you can eliminate and fees that you could eliminate.
Yeah.
With a smart contract, there, getting rid of title companies and all this other crap.
Right, and even with like real estate, some of those people are legally required to be a part of the transaction. Whereas in a free market, they might be part of the transaction, but it's not compulsory. But yeah,
with a smart contract, they wouldn't be needed.
None of those people basically would be needed, and that's the thing is like. With Bitcoin, there are these other things where you can create smart contracts. You can create real titles and title transfer, a system to basically determine with mathematical certainty who owns something and who transacted with who.
And when that saves somebody money because they didn't have to pay those fees, how much human time and energy are they saved right there?
Like I wish all of my customers tomorrow. I disagree with a lot of things about Bitcoin, but overall, I think it will lower costs to businesses drastically. You can never have it 100% your way on anything, right?
I was just thinking that.
So it's like you
don't look at all or nothing.
It's
either,
like a little give and take, right? So if all of my customers used Bitcoin tomorrow, I would save upwards of 3% a year, which is huge.
At Tony's outside.
That's thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
so you get extra. That's more. I can hire someone else to make better customer service. I could get more bonuses. I could upgrade equipment. I mean, for a system that's been around since literally the 1950s, of Visa and the MasterCard and the credit card system is not anything new. Yeah. I'm actually surprised it took so damn long for something like a cryptocurrency to arise.
Probably because of regulation.
And it is. That's also a scary thing, too. Maybe we can touch on the backside about maybe some macro economics and things like that.
Let's do that, or maybe OJ, because I actually want to get into that a little bit.
Okay,
but we're coming to break with Zasha and Bart. It's been a lively discussion. We may not agree on everything, but I hope we've all learned from this, and I've been fun. And also, what Zasha kind of reminded me of, it's not black or white, because I think even the most diehard Bitcoin advocate would understand certain weaknesses either inherent to the current state of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general, because that's just true of anything in life.
Absolutely.
So we're coming back on the other side for the final segment of the Crypto Show. Stay tuned, guys.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 13, 2016. Logos Radio Network brings us to your ears, as well as our sponsors, Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements, and now eCoin. And we'll talk about that in a coming episode and maybe have them back on. So we're talking with Bart and Zasha. We've been having a lively Bitcoin discussion. I think it's been good. Obviously, still much left to be resolved and discussed, but it's been a fun debate. And I want to switch gears for this final segment and talk about something that, as much as I love the philosophy of money and technology and the discussions about the Federal Reserve and what makes a good money and all that, man, I love a good conspiracy. And of course, there is a huge conspiracy behind money, the Federal Reserve, but I think that goes without saying. But real quick, just as a sort of intro, Bart has long told me in our discussions, we have great discussions personally, one-to-one, about certain interesting things that totally jive with what I feel is the truth about media and American history and current events and celebrities. And basically, it's that and I remember too, real quick, I was like 13 or 14 when the O.J. Simpson trial was happening, and we literally skipped a class. I went to a private school too. We literally skipped a class so everyone could huddle into the library to watch the O.J. Simpson verdict. Wow. I remember this specifically. I remember standing next to my friend's older brother, Brian, watching it. And anyway, it was a big deal. And what I've come to realize about a lot of media things is that when they focus on something really hardcore, something is wrong. Something is up. And so basically, well, Bart, you tell us. You tell it. What is your take on the whole O.J. Simpson trial?
Well, it was a huge, as was in the 1990s, two of the biggest things that happened were crisis in the White House, the president is a slut. And the other one, we got to figure this out. He had an affair with the intern, and he pointed his finger and he denied it. And the other big media story that just carried the day forever was the story about how OJ, he's guilty, he's innocent. And as you watch that trial, the prosecution would lay down things that made him look very guilty. And then, somebody will say, well, no, he was being driven to the grave, and just because his car was pointing to Mexico doesn't mean he was running to Mexico. He's horribly distraught because of this reason or that reason. What I would argue would just in general be that if you were to look at the O.J. Simpson case at depth and not take in a lot of processed information from media, you can actually figure out pretty closely what exactly happened.
Which makes sense in a very basic way, because if you're just ignoring what the interpretation they're trying to give you in the framing and just look at the evidence, theoretically, you could come to a different conclusion. I absolutely agree. Sorry,
so I'll run this by real quick because we're here. I believe, that in 1975, O.J. Simpson, while he was playing for the Buffalo Bills, got busted in a drug sting that was aimed at him. A bartender by the name of Butch Casimir Sucharski got swept up in that, and O.J. supposedly didn't get caught up in that thing. I believe that somebody was there, and they said, look, you're one of them. We can't even tell the little children in the ghetto that their hero, O.J. Simpson, likes to do a buttload of cocaine on the weekends, but you got to give us something back. And perhaps he got busted by the political ascendancy police. Now, it's kind of a crazy idea, but if you know how drugs are held inside, are part of inner workings, because we do our instantaneous cross-transactional bartering with unconstitutional, undemocratic money that created a $20 trillion debt cycle. The printing money and moving it around on the planet isn't the only thing that's going on.
No, and in fact, real quick, let
me just finish.
Go ahead.
In late May of 1994, Bill Clinton and O.J. Simpson are golfing together. Okay, at that time, 9 of Bill Clinton's bodyguards, and this is a book I can find in the Brave New Bookstore here by George Humphrey, are dead. 4 of them shot right in the head up here at Waco.
The Clinton body count.
Yeah,
I mean, if anyone's seen those videos,
there's a body count in the O.J. trial. There's Dominic Dunn's son getting lost in the desert, and later he comes out and produces a movie called Fierce People, which has got some intrigue, aspects of intrigue that may have been whittled down. But I'll run a quick little bit of numerology that people will find out.
Well, real quick before we do that, I just want to add to what you were just saying, but that's interesting
Not that
stuff.
I'm into numerology, but I'll explain why that's significant.
And I know what you mean. One thing that's significant too is OJ golfing with Bill Clinton. I'm not going to know a lot off the top of my head, but I've seen a lot of it, and you can research it. Well, research something called the Clinton body count, all of these mysterious deaths around the Clintons over the years. But more importantly, there's a lot of evidence that the CIA, with the assistance of Bill Clinton as governor of Arkansas, was running drugs, obviously primarily cocaine, but others, of course, through Mena, Arkansas. And this really ties back around, and it's going to be hard, of course, in what little time we have in the segment.
Run that right into OJ. That whole scenario is significant in terms of where we were and what was exposed. Yeah. In March of 1994, a book called Compromised, the first part of it, became a bestseller. Terry Reid and John Cummings got together, wrote the book Compromised, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA.
You've actually carried the bookstore, yeah.
And it sort of explains how the Clinton and Bush political teams are held in place, or held up by a huge pile of cash that they sit on, based on all the cocaine that was around during the 1980s and of course beyond. That as Bill Clinton got exposed in a number of different ways in that 1994 era, what should have emerged was people's interest in, well, what was going on with Iran-Contra? How did Reagan-Bush contract with Clinton in Arkansas to run the gun and ammo system?
Right, and that's kind of the distraction you talked about before.
Don't we all need to know that in a post-Kennedy assassination war? Okay, well, what gets weird about him golfing real weird about that golf game in I guess out in California in Del Mar with OJ, is that could some psyop that wouldn't have turned into the idea of OJ having to be the killer of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson, could some other psyop have been being planned or scheduled?
Absolutely, which is a great question.
But we don't exist behind closed doors where things
all of this is going on. Exactly. Let me switch gears real quick. Sorry, I just want to include Zasha on this real quick. Zasha, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that assertion that OJ might have been innocent and or at least the victim of a political victim of being an insider, and maybe they were taking him out or in some way? And I don't know if you think this is at all plausible. Does it jive with anything else you think about current events?
I do think it's interesting that he was completely pumped onto the media. I always find that questionable when it's on every single channel, mainstream avenue. I do think there's some other agenda. And that was also a time in the mid-'90s when there was a lot of legislation that was being pushed through by the Clinton administration. It was NAFTA. That's probably the best one that everyone can reference. But a lot of banking, deregulation, and added regulations that completely, I believe actually he removed Glass-Steagall. I'm pretty sure it happened during the Clinton years. I know that's probably a buzzword that a lot of people have been hearing. Stupid old Bernie Sanders talk about that all the time, acting like he wants to bring that back, but they always come with like, well, we need to bring a version of Glass-Steagall back. Like that's going to work, right? But anyway, it's like, yes, I think it was a very we don't know the truth, and I'm not really well versed on this subject, but I do think that since it was pumped on the media along with Monica, and now Monica is like a correspondent or something, a social media advocate, not social media, but because she got abused or whatever, so she's turning into like this big
celebrity
again,
yeah.
but in the
with
good
credibility,
light. Which is, I feel like they almost planned that out a little bit, and maybe that coincided probably a little bit with OJ. There's probably no doubt in my mind about that. But
well, let me ask you too, real quick, because we only have a little bit of time. What are there other current events that you have been skeptical of about as far as the media narrative, like maybe recently, or that remind you of the OJ Simpson trial?
Oh man. Hell, most of the stuff that's kind of happening right now.
Like everything?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many distractions at this point. But I mean, they're getting it down to the nitty gritty where it's like, you can't say certain words, and we have to debate about, all these non-existent race issues. In my opinion, I'll go around and see a lot of racist people around. Like, the media would have you believe everybody's just to kill
it's totally inflated,
a white person or black, whatever.
And it's a distraction too. I mean, it's a divide and conquer thing.
I think that's kind of a correlation. I think that's
yeah.
like the biggest distraction. They just had to move it into a different direction because, maybe like an OJ. I mean, what has there been? I guess what was that one? The shootings, probably like a Zimmerman or something, or like a lot of these shootings seem like that's like the new version of the distraction.
That's true. Like they've gone into a different form
of it.
They
just had to switch it up.
George Zimmerman, alphanumeric, goes to 33. If you put the G and the Z, and Trayvon Martin go alphanumeric on his letters.
Trayvon Martin's dad, by the way, was a Freemason, and I also believe
initials were 33.
Yeah, what's the other one? The Knights, not the Arab one, the Muslim version of it. It's not literally the Muslim version of it, but Shriners. Thank you. Yeah, and so that really shocked me when it became clear the media was distorting the whole race issue, where there was literally zero evidence for a racial motivation.
That's why I was suggesting.
But then the Trayvon Martin's dad is his Freemason. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, what the hell? I'm not big into numerology either, but there are so many weird connections.
There are certain things, though, where, like, for instance, real quick, one of my favorites is the atomic bomb, which is one of the stages of alchemy, the transmutation of metals, was dropped on a date that sums to 33 along the 33rd parallel by a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, Truman, who was the 33rd president. They do stuff like that all the time. Maybe not all the time, or maybe it's not always certain.
If OJ was being set up to be some part of a political manipulation, his last movie was Naked Gun 33 1/3. That's 33 and forever, and then he gets 33 years in prison, and he has to pay a $33 million fine.
And he was part of that movie Capricorn 1, which was about a hoax Mars landing or whatever. Yeah.
It's that comes out, if the corruption in government comes out, you're going to get killed in the desert.
Yeah. I mean, even Apollo 11. We're coming to the end. I can't quite tell. My thing is kind of zonked out, but 9 seconds. Bart, Zasha, thanks so much, guys.
No problem. Thanks for having us on here, man.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on The Crypto Show.